I imagine that perhaps this recent bear market sort of helps a lot of artists clear out their mind, and including myself, and that I think that's the best thing that could happen for art. And it's the best thing that could happen for generative art, because now we're getting the next wave of artists that are, thinking about this work as a whole. They're looking back at the last 5 years and saying, hey, that was all awesome, but how can I really think about this work in a new way and without the pressure of the market? And it's also been a good 5-year period of skill building for most artists in this space that are working in this medium. And a lot of maturing has happened. And I feel it myself. I feel like my work has matured, my mentality has matured, my skills have matured. And so I'm ready to embrace the next wave of generative art that I create to be something that comes from deeper within, something which way more pure and way more just authentic. And I guarantee you that I'm not the only one feeling that way.
All right, episode 3. Just had a great conversation with Daniel Calderon, also known as DCA. Daniel's a good friend of mine, and he's like a mentor to me. And I think we had a really good conversation. We touched on a lot of different topics. We dug into some of his art collections of the past, what he's been working on now, also his role at Generative Goods, and general opinions about the space and the future for the space. So I think it's a really good conversation. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoy. Before we jump in, none of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment and information purposes only. Please take everything with a grain of salt and do your own research. More information can be found in the podcast episode description below. All right, now let's get into it. DCA, man, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for making the time. How's everything going on your end these days? I know you have a gigantic project that you're currently working on. So what's that project?
Raising a kid, raising a baby. Yeah, my wife recently had a baby just this past month. And yeah, it's definitely been a handful. Lost a lot of sleep. All my routines got mixed up, and all my routines got broken basically. I used to wake up, make breakfast, do some exercise, sit down, get to work for a while, go get lunch. But the last month has just been total disaster in that regard. I'm lucky if I can even eat breakfast, just because baby wakes up early and gotta do some diaper duty, do some entertaining, deal with a little bit of crying, a little bit of hunger for the baby. And so it's a lot, but it's awesome. It's totally worth it. It's been the most incredible past 4 weeks in my life probably. So yeah, that's the big project I'm working on. It's a 20-year commitment.
Oh my God, man. Well, I'm super happy for you both. I know it's a big undertaking, a huge undertaking, but you guys, are gonna do great, I think, as parents. And so you have also been recently working a lot with generative goods, right? So
Yeah.
I want to get into like your backstory and stuff like that. And I'm going to ask about a lot of questions about, how you kind of fell into this space overall and your artistic practice and stuff. But because you've been so, I guess, hyper focused, it seems like with generative goods in parallel to having a baby.
Yeah.
I figure, why don't we just jump into that and kind of maybe give us a little bit of the background story with generative goods, the work that you've been doing, and kind of where things are at right now.
Definitely. So Lyft launched a couple of days ago, and that was Eric's personal artwork with Glitch Gallery. And so we've been working on that at Generative Goods with Eric for the past, I want to say 4 or 5 months, just pretty intensely. I mean, it's crazy because the final result of the project it might seem real simple from the outside, like, oh, it's just a game and you download the game and you play it on the Game Boy and whatnot. But damn, it is so hard to make a game. There's so many elements to it. There's the pixel sprites, there's mechanics, there's the NFT component, there's the download portions, the embroideries, the actual ROM file. There's and like every little character in the game has like multiple animation sequences, and there's different types of elements in the game, like the backgrounds. And I mean, it's just like incredibly complex of an undertaking, even though from the outside, when I look at it, even from the outside, I'm like, oh, this looks like a relatively simple thing. You just put some graphics up on the screen and hit download. But damn, it is like so complex. And so we've been working on that for like months, and just like sometimes it just feels like there's no end to it. But as the deadline kind of gets closer, we start cracking down on the work hours, and these last couple of weeks were just so intense. Basically staying up till like 2 or 3, waking up at like 8 in the morning and then just working all day. And so it just got real it got real intense towards the end, but it was totally worth it. I mean, just the project as a whole, I think looks great. It's Eric's creation, it's Eric's vision, it's Eric's ideas. He's the mastermind behind this whole project. And my role is basically to kind of help create like the JavaScript for the front end, mostly like the NFT portion, like the part that's visible on the screen. Whereas like a lot of the ROM components is basically written in C, is all done by Eric, and he uses like pretty advanced forms of cursor to like to just really do things that were not easily possible without extended knowledge. So it's just a really cool dynamic too, just like working with Eric. I've known him my whole life, but I don't think I've ever worked with him in this capacity.
Cool.
And just seeing the way he operates is pretty fascinating. Like, I feel like I learned a lot about being an artist just by watching Eric. So, yeah, it's so this last few months have been pretty intense, but the last couple of weeks were super intense. And then at the same time, my wife was pregnant and delivered a baby, and so kind of like trying to figure out what's up and what's down. So now that the project's been released and or published, and things are sort of stabilizing in the kid realm, so I've taken a good handful of weeks of paternity leave, and just kind of recollecting myself, and enjoying life, enjoying the baby, enjoying like the fruits of the labor from the project, seeing the whole community like support. And so yeah, it's been a pretty awesome time.
Wow. Well, I think it's a super cool project, and I think the fact that the a large part of the community was able to kind of create their own sprite, and that be such an integral part of the visual, I guess, output of the project is pretty cool. So yeah, I think that was fun to be a part of. It's kind of crazy how it must have been a really tough few weeks or a few months for you, man, with everything going on. So kudos to you, man, and congrats on kind of getting through that. That must have been pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that personally, like, I know Eric is built for this kind of stuff, and I'm sort of built for it too. Like, we operate extremely well under pressure, and like, especially if we have something that we're excited about. Like, Eric's excited about the project, and I'm excited about the code, and so it actually works out really well. But
Awesome,
yeah,
man.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. It was definitely a crazy couple of weeks, but totally worth it. And you know, it's part of the fun. And in fact, it's probably going to be my most memorable summer ever.
Wow.
So
True. I could see that. That's
yeah.
crazy. It's funny because even for me, I look back, and some of the experiences and things that I went through, and going through it was like the day to day was like hell. But then in retrospect, you look and you could see how much you kind of grew through that experience.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think especially if it's something that's, really, a meaningful endeavor for you. And so I think, if all of these things that you've been working your ass off on have been meaningful endeavors for you, I could see that probably being the case. So congrats, man. Congrats again. Super happy for you. And hopefully you're able to just, yeah, continue to take some time and just fucking enjoy life a little bit. And, it's summertime. You're in Houston. I hope you're going and eating good barbecue and stuff like that. And if you have time for that, but
Definitely.
awesome, man. That's
Definitely.
great.
Why don't you give also like just like the high level kind of like backstory, kind of what generative goods is and kind of the role that you've been playing within the team, because it's like, I guess, a small and mighty team right now with like a big vision, right? So you
Yeah.
play a key component to all of this. So maybe share that kind of backstory a little bit if you
Sure,
can.
sure. And as far as I know, like generative goods was already formed by the time I kind of got involved. So I don't know like the full backstory of like how Eric kind of put it together and all that. But I do know that it's kind of like a side project for Eric and it's kind and ArtBlocks too. It's related to ArtBlocks. And the goal of generative goods is it's kind of multifold, and it's also evolving. I think originally we started out as bringing generative art to like the mass audience, people that are not in crypto, and it's been kind of like a creative challenge to solve that. Like, how do we do that? We've explored a lot of cool things like making cards that are like they have NFC chips that you tap and you can claim actual physical merchandise as well as like digital artifacts. And then we've also done things like this project Lift, which is kind of like more of like generative goods is kind of filling in this role to help Eric create his artistic vision. And I can't speak for generative goods. I'm simply just an employee there. Um, and I don't know like what direction Eric wants to take it in, but there's definitely a lot of avenues in which directions it could go. Like this whole game thing was, I think, a total blast, and it was actually fun, like to work on, and I know Eric had an awesome time working on it too, and so I can already kind of sense like maybe like what if generative goods makes like as a game studio, like on chain, like I don't know, like, just things like that. Those are cool ideas that kind of pass by and thinking, like what is the mission well, it's not a mission, but the goal of the company is to kind of bring generative art out into, a broader realm, and gaming certainly is that potential broader realm. But it's also there's a lot of innovation that happens in generative goods. So far we've created like super robust embroidery algorithms to be able to pretty much stitch anything, um and you know kind of exploring new ground with NFC chips and the cards, and basically like one of one cards. And then also even like the whole Lift game is pretty much like pushing a lot of boundaries at once, like creating customizable ROM files for like retro Game Boy consoles. I mean, like, who does that, right? Like, that's so unique, and like I don't even know if it's ever been done before. It's just one of like Eric's like super creative ideas like put into actual action. Um, but there's a lot of other elements to that too, like creating these animated sprites and like writing algorithms for that to be able to like pixelize pretty much anything, like um for use in blockchain, even like L1. Like this project Lift is on L1 and there's a lot of data in there. So like just being able to compress all that sort of data and put it on a main chain is kind of innovative too. Like, I mean, there's just a lot of cool like fronts that generative goods is pushing on. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. And honestly, I have no idea where it's going and where it will lead to, but I just know that it's just getting honestly funner for me as a coder, and also just like more exciting every time there's like a new project and whatnot. So I wouldn't really call that a backstory for generative goods, but that's sort of a lot of opinions and thoughts on the whole experience so far.
Cool, man. Everything that is being worked on right now with generative goods, from what I can see and from what you're sharing with me, is pretty exciting. So yeah, I'll be kind of just, watching from the sides and kind of seeing how things continue to unfold. But
Cool.
that's really cool stuff, and I'm glad that you're increasingly enjoying, I guess, the work that you're involved with there, because I know it's probably not easy at times, but that's great, man.
Yeah, it's definitely complex work. Complex is a relative term, like to me it's complex. To somebody like a rocket scientist, it might be like the easiest thing, but like there's just a lot of components to the stuff we do. it's just like the kind of stuff that like I don't know, it's kind of like playing chess, you know, like you gotta, or I don't even, chess isn't even the right analogy. It's more like playing with a switchboard and like plugging in, you know, like cables here and there and like creating like this interesting output that way. It's just a crazy complex like interconnection of you know, variables and stuff that make all that power all this stuff we're doing. So it's cool. It's definitely cool.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Okay, well, maybe shifting gears a little bit. Why don't we kind of jump into kind of like the backstory of kind of going all the way back, I guess, like the backstory of how you either fell into becoming an artist or the backstory of how you fell into coding, kind of like bring us up to speed just a little bit of that whole process. Cause I think that's always a useful exercise for people to be able to understand that kind of progression.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it depends how far back you want to go. I guess I started sketching and drawing and on paper when I was what, like 10 or 11. Didn't really pursue any kind of art like in a official capacity until college, really. You know, my grandfather was a painter, my grandmother painted. They were both very bohemian sort of people that followed like the art scene and always hung out in the art crowd. And so I think that has a pretty big influence on me. And I think that's one of my ultimate, like deeply seated drivers. But you know, like growing up, I did music, a little bit of architecture, played the violin, played guitar, things like that. I never really was too much into sports, but I did play like baseball and stuff, like little league. But just like middle school, high school, I didn't really do any sports. I don't know, I was kind of a weird kid. Always like sketching in a little sketchbook and just like minding my own business, but a little bit of a rebel here and there. And then, you know, my parents really didn't love the concept of putting me in any kind of art class, especially like at school. But I did get the chance to dabble in um, something that I thought was really important to me, which was animation. When I was, you know, like in middle school or so, my parents put me into a stop motion animation class at the Glassell School of Art, which is in Houston. It's like run by the Museum of Fine Arts. And so we had like Super 8 cameras and like kind of moving little clay figurines and like stepping back and snapping the frame. And, you know, and then we would develop the film and see the animation. And that to me was just like, oh, like heaven. Like I just loved that. Like obviously like not something I could really turn into something like financially feasible or a career out of, especially because I was just too young and it was just fun, but I just loved doing that. And I also have these like really old reels of my grandfather making stop motion, like back in the I don't know, 30s, 40s. Not even sure
Wow.
when it was, but
Really?
there's these
Wow.
little like little
That's
animated
cool.
things that he would make with his Super 8 cameras. And so like I feel like I saw that at a really young age and I connected with it later in life. I also loved
Cool.
watching like stop motion animation films, you know, like Nightmare Before Christmas and like things like that.
Sure.
Just love that stuff growing up.
Sweet.
Um, Later that turned into more of like 3D animation, like modeling in 3D. And I was kind of lucky as a kid because I had a computer in my room, you know, like since I was, I don't know, like 13 or 12, I don't know, like whatever. When computers were barely like kind of starting, at least the home computers and with the internet and stuff, we've always had a computer at our house with internet and um but I had a computer in my own room, and Eric somehow got me this software called Lightwave 3D, and I started learning it, and it was definitely hard to use. But in little understanding I could get from it, I sort of made these animations and like rendered them out, and it was just like the coolest stuff to me. There weren't YouTube tutorials, there weren't like infinite books on how to use these things back then. So it was just real hard. You had to learn on your own. And so I got like a real really unique understanding of like how 3D modeling works, because I had to like force myself to learn it. And then later on that sort of evolved into things like Blender. And eventually once I got into college, I actually got a degree in economics, but I was unsatisfied with it. I went back and I said, you know what, I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do, and I'm going to actually go to art school. And so I signed up for like an undergrad program at University of Houston in sculpture, went through the whole program, and then went into their master's program there and spent another 3 years at the grad level doing sculpture as well. And so all of that kind of manifested in, I guess my career as an artist. Like that is my, I guess, official title if you look at my degree, uh, which is, practically worthless. But,
Oh man.
I do consider myself like to some extent like an artist. I've been trained, at the academic level to think about sculpture and art in, particular ways. It's all just BS, but, um, at the end of the day, I do operate in the art realm still. And when ArtBlocks launched right after I graduated with my master's program, it was awesome because during COVID, like everything kind of went to shit. And it's like, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to teach. I was teaching at the time, and I continued teaching for a few years after, but it just wasn't really a feasible thing. And so when ArtBlocks launched, realized that there was a whole audience and community out there of like art lovers, generative art lovers and digital art lovers and whatnot. And I just didn't really think that existed. Wasn't aware. And so I sort of pivoted towards more computational things. Also, because COVID, like all my access to studios was shut off and I had to be at home. All I had was a laptop. I didn't really have a studio that I could do a lot of stuff in. So, it turned into a clean room with just a laptop and like, what can I do with a computer? So like, COVID kind of nudged me in that direction anyways. And then just having such a like supportive community out there just definitely was like, this is where I need to be. Like the Discord community alone was like, just felt even more supportive than like the traditional art space, of like the last 3 years in grad school. Everybody's kind of like trying to steal your ideas and copy what you do, and like you got to be secretive in that realm, and you don't let people in your studio to look. And but like here online, everybody's sharing everything and like just super positive and like so it was just such a different realm. Naturally I gravitated towards that. It just was a lot more comfortable and exciting. Also pushing boundaries here, where sculpture is kind of like that. You could also, there's a lot you can explore with sculpture, but there's a lot that has already been done and already been explored. And you kind of have to build on like ideas that are just extremely niche and new. Whereas like in the coding world, you are like presented with like a huge empty field of like exploration, like there's so much to explore. You can pull from data and do data visualization. You can like do like recursive things. You could explore different kinds of algorithms. You can get expressive with like colors and textures. And there's just so much. You could connect this stuff to real world things, like flip on a light switch in your house and like your artwork on screen changes. There's just like all kinds of stuff that you can do. It's unexplored territory. We're pioneers. Like really, we are pioneers. And so it's just so much more exciting to me in that regard. And I ended up just really doubling down on everything programming or code for me. And since 2020, I've been basically like nose deep in JavaScript every single day, like every single day. And my skill in the, the craft of creating algorithms has just like increased dramatically over that time period. And what's really interesting in art is that like it takes about 10 years to really feel like you've reached a point where like things become intuitive and you're able to express really really easily. And this is my opinion. I think it takes about 10 years. So I covered that ground with sculpture. I've been dabbling in sculpture and messing around with that stuff for more than 10 years. And so like I reached that point where I'm like, okay, art is what I'm going to do. Like, I just need to kind of find my materials and kind of work in that, in what I know. And then when coding came along, I was like, oh wow, this is a whole new layer on top of everything I know. Like, so it just made art so much more exciting for me. So, I feel like the last 5 years now have been just like incredible learning experience. My skills have reached a point where I'm past the novelty of the code part, and I'm more into like the expressive part, like communicating my ideas and my thoughts through code. That's really exciting to me because a lot of that learning curve is past now. Like I understand the language very well. So yeah, it's like, I don't know. That's kind of how I got here. Is that a pretty windy path? I don't know. Like, did that make sense? I don't even know if that was linear, but
Dude, yeah, of course, man. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
That's how we got here.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. It's a very, to me, it's a very logical path of how, and it's also serendipitous a little bit with the timing, with everything that was happening, with you finishing up your formal education with your Master's of Fine Arts while the pandemic's happening, and so you don't have access to different studio spaces for you to be able to explore maybe what you thought you were going to be primarily focusing on, which is sculpture in the artistic space. And then all while ArtBlocks is also kind of,
Yeah.
about to be launched, I guess. And so, it's really, it's really interesting. And I'm very happy for you that you felt like you found a specific niche that was really exciting to you and that you wanted to double down on. And like, I'm very happy for you, man. And over the last, I guess it's been like, what? It's been like 5 years
It
now.
has, yeah.
Does it feel like it's been that long, or does it
It's
feel like it's been a lifetime or a
honestly, it
year?
feels like maybe it's been 2 years to me, but it just flew by so fast. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it on the calendar, you're like, damn, that is undisputably 5 years.
Yeah. I guess I feel like maybe that annual Marfa event that happens is a good way of us to be able to kind of keep tabs on how many years it's been in this space.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
it's really interesting too how I guess you had your formal art education, and then in parallel you were also kind of learning how to code. That I guess these are totally kind of separate kind of
hmm
paths that you
hmm
were kind of on, and it's interesting how there was that convergence and how you've been able to
Yeah.
um yeah, integrate both of those in your practice.
Well, I should mention that while I was in my grad program, I was doing things that were digital physical. So like my sculpture had a lot of elements that were programmed. So I was already kind of messing with code even before ArtBlocks, and I had been playing with code for a while before. I just very lightly, superficially, like every now and then, it wasn't like the heart of my practice. But in grad school, I was doing a lot of things that kind of involve microcontrollers and kind of programming Arduino type devices to control objects and creating systems. Really, I was creating systems, like basically creating generative art in the physical form. This is definitely something that I've been into for a while, like even before ArtBlocks. Like generative art, existed, at least in my practice, since 2018, 2017. um there's a sculpture I made in grad school, which I'm super proud of. But the thing is like the professors there necessarily didn't, they weren't so tech forward, right? And so it just wasn't a good fit for the program. And so I mean, I did get encouragement, but I just there was definitely it was more of like a political bend to the academics, and my work was just kind of like, I don't know, like redundant. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, I c- I feel like if I had gone to a different school, I might have gotten way more support in that department. But aside, I made this really cool sculpture in 2018 that sort of takes this rock and projects like 3 generated words to create a poem onto this rock, rotates 360 degrees, and then it's like this completely automated system. And every, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, like, so this rock is rotating and there's light projected on it, these words, and they sort of undulate with like the rock surface. And these rocks are, I personally love rocks a lot. And there's 360 degrees to this rock, and there's different phrases that get assembled. And so every 15 minutes or so, this rock would like stop rotating, and then a camera would automatically like pop open a flash, take a photograph, and then send it directly to a printer. The printer would print out the image and then spit it out. And then like it would just do that all day. And then, this pile of like unique phrases with unique views of the rock would sort of pile up on the floor. And it was kind of like, it was basically a generative art project in a physical manifestation. And I used a little hash string too. This was a very short hash string.
Oh,
But it was just such a cool concept. I think it was a little bit ahead of its time. And most people that I had an exhibition where it was shown, and everybody just loved it. I encouraged people to take these photographs home with them. So like people would come and sift through them and find a phrase that sort of resonates with them and take them home. And there's people that still have them like on their fridge, and like every now and then like, hey, I still have that like rock photo. And I'm like, that is crazy. But
That's awesome.
it's literally like generative process and a generative system. So I was already playing with that stuff and playing with code to some extent, but not JavaScript, and,
Okay.
when 2020 came around, I sort of switched into JavaScript and doubled down on that. But so there was overlap with what I was doing in grad school.
Super cool. I gotta get one of those photos somewhere. I gotta find someone who's got one.
I'll dig some up, and I'll also share some photos here with you so you could maybe share them on the.
Yeah, totally, man. Yes, cool, man. So then I guess that takes us to, we could say, day 0 or day 1 ArtBlocks. And so you released your first actual long form generative collection on ArtBlocks called Genesis. So something that I'm hoping to do, I guess, with this chat is I want to dig into really a lot of as many collections as we can that you've created over the last 5 years, and we can dig in a little bit and just get kind of like some of the backstory and some of your process, your artistic process, and some of the details that you want to share. So why don't we jump in? So Genesis.
Well, Genesis was a prototype for ArtBlocks early on. The whole project was practically created in 2018. The whole idea was like create an image that is unique and is assembled by using a token hash or a hash string in general. It doesn't have to be a token hash, just any hash string. So I created that, and it was used for, when Eric was developing ArtBlocks, we did some tests and stuff with it here and there, and we, used it for like the white paper, and, like just used it for various things. Like when Eric first got like the Ethereum, it was the block hash connected to his script. We did a couple of tests, like me, Eric, Pete, and a couple other people, where we were all like, I think one guy was in Iran, like we were in the States, somebody was like in California, maybe, I don't know, like we were just in different parts of the world or the States. And we did tests, like we submitted a token, and the algorithm would, on all of our screens at the same time, would immediately display the same image, right? And that's when we were like sharing screenshots, like, hey, this is what mine looks like. What does yours look like? And it was like the same image we're comparing. And we're like, holy shit, it works. And that was super cool. And so like, Genesis was like that kind of test project. It really wasn't meant to be anything too expressive. It was just like a proof of concept, really, like some triangles, some squares, some grid, maybe like some kind of more rare items, like confetti and Bezier curves, and so like it just kind of operated in that capacity from 2018 all the way to 2020, like I want to say like a couple of weeks before, ArtBlocks went live, is when Eric sort of reached out to me via email and was like, "Hey, dude, you think you could port your project into like JavaScript?" And I'm like, I don't know JavaScript. It was written in Java, and so there was like this intermediary language before P5 really kind of was operating too well. It was called Processing JS. It was written in the original Genesis was written in Processing, and then I used Processing JS to make it friendly for the web. And the one that's on chain is Processing JS, and so it was all kind of like in the last couple of weeks before ArtBlocks went live, that got turned into that language, and then Eric did all the kind of like the busy work, like uploading it to the blockchain and getting it ready for the launch, and then it went live, and everything that happened after that, just like ArtBlocks came to life with obviously with Chromie Squiggles and with Construction Token too. It was just a really exciting day, but Genesis was just a small part of that, and that's really the project. And so like there's a lot that I wish I could have put into the work. If now that I think about it, like, oh damn, like if I would have known that it would have been like like collected by all these people and totally immutable, like you can't change anything. There's a lot of things that I wish I could have maybe done to make it more expressive, more exciting. But at the end of the day, I love it. I still look at Genesis outputs and I think, man, it's just so simple, just some colors and some shapes on a screen. That's all it is, really. It's art. It's really all that art is just like things to look at. I mean, you could argue that art can be way more conceptual, but in my mind, like that's all it needs to be. And so that's why I like Genesis so much. It's just pure. It's like there's nothing super intentional. There's nothing super like embedded. It's just showing that infinite variety can come from, from randomness, from random token strings or hash strings. So I stand by Genesis as like one of my most coveted project in that regard.
I love that, man, dude. And I love Genesis as a proof of concept that you're in the backstory that you're sharing. And on a personal note, man, I'm like it's like one of the pieces for me that I'm like, I can't believe that I haven't been able to pick one up. And there's been I've been like doing bids like, like
Yeah.
crazy, and then it just has never worked. And in retrospect, I'm like, fuck, why didn't I just fucking, just take as much ETH as I could and just buy
Yeah.
one off the floor? It's so stupid, man. I think we've talked about that before. Like, I've really been wanting a piece. And it was one of the pieces early on when I discovered ArtBlocks that I appreciated it for its kind of like the simplicity a little bit. And I was still learning about, I guess, the broader context of really what was happening, this kind of on-chain long form generative art movement that was really being pioneered by ArtBlocks. But it was always one of the projects that I appreciated from that standpoint. But then after getting to know you, and then on top of that, understanding the backstory behind its creation, I'm like, I'm definitely like pretty pissed, dude. I'm pretty salty right now. I just
Appreciate that, man. I only have like 2 or 3 of them myself. Like I didn't really collect any of them, and I kind of wish I had more because then I could give them to friends and whatnot. But yeah, no, it's better that they're yeah, I would that would be great.
it's okay.
But I'm glad that ultimately that they're in collectors' hands. One of my like claim to fames is that like number 0 was not minted by me, and it somehow ended up in like the hands of probably like the guy with like the most conviction of generative art and in the in the space, DC
Yeah.
investor. And
Yeah.
I
DC
just
investor.
can't imagine it being in better hands, honestly.
And I know it's like one of, well, I can't really, I was going to say, it seems like it's one of his most cherished, pieces.
Yeah.
If not one of his most cherished pieces, it's something that he is very proud to have acquired. And so, yeah, I think that that's pretty cool. I think that DC investor, he's a pretty, like, whether it's the words prolific or he's just a very, respected. So DC Investor, I was following DC Investor like before I got into the NFT space. And I remember I really appreciated his perspective. He was super knowledgeable about the space. Then and I was curious about NFTs, but I was oblivious to the kind of art movement that was happening on chain. This would have been in like late 2020 into early 2021, and it was actually with the release of Meebits. I think that might have been in May of 2021. It was around that time for me that NFTs and the kind of like the NFT movement that was happening really got on my radar in a meaningful way, and I became really curious. And then it was around that time that I started to learn about ArtBlocks and everything that was happening. And it was, I'm not going to say it was like a light switch, but it was a relatively fast process of a period of maybe days, if not maybe weeks, where I then really kind of fell down that rabbit hole. And that is really where I found this real passion for the space and everything that was happening. So shout out to DC Investor.
Totally.
And if you're happy that he's got number 0, I'm happy too, because he was a big, I consider him like one of the reasons really that I ended up falling into the space overall. So, and I looked to even to his collection, and there's a couple pieces that I had eventually bought that actually was somewhat informed based on the fact that DC Collector was, interested in those artists.
That's
or
awesome.
whatever. Even a piece from Ann Spalter back in 2021. I kind of fell down the rabbit hole a little bit with her work and some of this, GAN-based work. And so, I still hold that piece today. And that was because I was snooping around in people's wallets. This is one of the, it's like a double-edged sword of, everything being on chain, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, that's cool. So then you released Genesis, and then I guess you have what's called the Gen Trilogy set. I think that's kind of like the umbrella term. So after the release of Genesis, you then release these subsequent projects. So
so
what was your thinking?
The following projects after Genesis are Gen 2 and Gen 3. And I think at that time, I was kind of wrapping my mind around everything. I want to say I was exploring a little bit. There was a lot going on between Genesis and then Gen 2 and Gen 3. In the space as a whole, there was crazy things happening, like crazy drops happening that were just like insane amounts of like volume and activity. And I want to say I kind of got caught up in like the excitement of just being able to mint things and distribute them to like broad audiences. And it was just it was an interesting time. That's when things were just selling out like crazy, and ArtBlocks was like super hot. And like the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum were just like off the charts, and it was just an insane time, right? And like there's something about this space as an artist that kind of like is really contradictory to like the inner like self, because on one hand you see what's happening in the crypto space, or I want to say the NFT space, and it just feels like an extremely fast moving river, you know? And like, if you're not up to date with everything, you're not watching every day, you're not looking at what everyone's doing, like you miss out on so much. Like one day felt like a year, right? There's just so much happening, and there's so many voices, and it just felt like it was extremely fast moving, and it kind of contradicts like the artist's like desire, at least my own desires, is I like things that are real slow and really thought out and like paced at my own pace. And so I think that like that whole time period put people into this dilemma. You jump into the fast moving river, or do you sit on the shore and watch it all pass by? Right. And so there was just so much happening, just people just kind of creating whatever kind of artwork and like minting it. And like, it was just cool. I mean, it was freaking awesome, but it was also kind of conflicting. Like, how much time do I have to put into my work, before like, it's just a weird dilemma. Right. And so after, Genesis, I sort of like, I feel like I kind of got into this like mental like zone where I'm like, do I act quick? Do I act slow? Like, do I take my time and like respect myself and my work and my creativity, or do I like give in to the excitement and like, just, throw my hands up and be like, woo, let's do this, like that kind of mentality. So I want to say that there was a lot of it was a nebulous moment for me, just everything that came after Genesis for that whole year. And so I was kind of like trying to figure out like how do I express myself in something that's like authentic to me, but also kind of like exciting, and so I was just playing with code. It's really what these next projects were, is just kind of playing with code and not thinking too hard about it, and like trying out new things, and a little bit of exploration, like playing with bitmaps and creating shapes and making them move around and sweep, and like Gen 2, for example, is this kind of just weird exploration of color and form, and um just like putting together these things that are a little irrational. Like, what am I even looking at? It's just like a bunch of colors and shapes, but if you kind of stand back, then it looks kind of like glitch art. But like when you dive into it a little bit more, it kind of opens up, and there's like this nice like sculptural sort of form that floats in the space, and it's just kind of like a whirlwind of thoughts and things going on in my head. And how do I kind of like capture this, and how do I get involved with this space, but also like do something that I like. It was just a really exciting time. Like, I want to say is a little nebulous for me, because I can't say for sure that like my intentions were, like at their fullest. At least my skill set was not fully developed yet. And, like it's just so I sort of see these projects as of just a reflection of the time. That's how I see them, and that's how I see my own practice. Is I'm usually just like kind of responding to the time and like what's popular at that moment, but like also what I'm into, what's exciting for me, and that way it's reflective of that moment, of that time, and maybe it doesn't age so well, right? Because trends fade, and colors and design choices kind of change. And so those, some works might look a little dated in 10 years, but that's also part of it. Like, that's why it's cool. That's why it's art. That's because it's also a reflection of that moment. And so with Gen 2 and Gen 3, I sort of kind of like just was playing and exploring, like trying to understand myself in the context of the NFT space, the generative art space, and just creating work and not thinking too much about it, but also I am thinking about it, like in some weird way. So I see those projects kind of all fall under this umbrella of like the first three projects I made on ArtBlocks, which is Genesis, Gen 2, and Gen 3. And so I just term them the Gen Trilogy, since they're kind of related, and they're all sort of explorations. And in my opinion, I feel like I was maybe pushing a little bit on the boundary with Gen 2, just being able to add interaction and motion, which wasn't really that big yet, in the NFT space, and at least in generative on-chain art. I hadn't seen too much interactivity. And then with Gen 3 is kind of playing with language and bringing in text, which was like hard to do because you couldn't put, it wasn't easy to put like a whole font on chain. It would be really expensive. And so like part of that was like, how do I bring text into this work? And, how do I kind of like push the text boundary a little bit? So I ended up writing my own like, code to generate these letters in real time. And, I ended up with this like kind of funky font, but that's, it's all code, it's all math anyway. So it's just really fun time. And honestly, playing with language too is something that's always been kind of like on the back of my mind. Just the whole idea of meaning in general. When you have these words that sort of so Gen 3 is basically three words that kind of relate to technology, the NFT space, or like the collector or the people. And it's a little bit of like tongue in cheek, sort of making fun of ourselves as like degenerates and whatnot, but also just kind of like throwing combinations of ingredients together and seeing what comes out, like three words that have never and probably in history ever been put sequentially together. There's no
Yeah,
meaning developed in our minds yet, because it's like, like, what does that mean? Right. Like, but because it's a particular format that the words, if you repeat them in your mind, a few times, it sort of starts to make a little bit of sense, right? Like, I should pull one up and
I have one right here. It's on your website.
sweet.
Registered Silicon Holiday.
What was that one?
Registered Silicon
Yeah,
Holiday.
exactly. Like, what the hell does that even mean, right? But that's the cool part about it. It's like you're using randomness to mix a bunch of ingredients together. Half the time you're going to get, like a recipe that tastes terrible, but what if those ingredients line up in a way that actually tastes good, right? And
For sure.
so like it's the same thing with words and language. You're mixing up a whole bunch of words, creating these phrases that might not make sense, but maybe if you think about them, registered silicon holiday, like if you say that over and over 5 or 6 times, your brain actually starts creating a meaning for it.
For sure.
And so it's like the abstraction of meaning itself. And so like that's what I really love about that concept. And then also the project sort of captures a bunch of weird lingo that was like at that time, that was like words that we were using at that time, um, that may not be in use in the next 10 years. Who knows, right? So like it's capturing a segment of like how we communicate, or like the words we use at that time, like in 2021. So in a way, these are kind of like relics. I like to think of these projects as relics of the of that time period, of like the boom of the NFT space. My hope is that when people look at these works 50 or 100 years from now, they'll be able to like find them interesting and say, okay, so here's a project that has these terms that people were using. Who uses these words anymore, right? Or they could learn a little bit about the space. They could learn a little bit about what's going on. So that's the Gen Trilogy project as a whole, and it's just those three. After that is when I sort of switched gears a little bit, and I started thinking about the work from a more personal level, thinking like, well, first off, what are the limitations of generative art? For the most part, is that we're presented with abstraction as the very first tool from the toolbox, geometric abstraction. How do we get past the geometric abstraction? So that means, how do we push generative art into the realm of figuration and representation, which is more of a challenge, because computers are good at making shapes, squares and circles and colors. And so a lot of the work that we see is geometric abstraction. So I took it upon myself as a challenge. How do I push myself past this boundary? And how do I push into the realm of landscapes and making things that we know, like plants and objects and people and things like that? In my mind, coming from the traditional art realm, I saw a big gap between the generative art space and the traditional art space. And that gap is representation, right? Like, how do we represent ourselves as humans? Because that's who we ultimately connect with. How do we show ourselves in these works? How do we show the world that we live in these works? And so after the Gen Trilogy sort of project set, I sort of said, you know what, I'm going to start exploring this new frontier, which is representation and with code. And so I started working on Really Random Rock, which is randomly generated rocks that sort of vibe with organic nature. Marfa Yucca. How do I create these plant forms? And like the plant forms in Marfa Yucca actually follow like the golden angle, which is like phyllotaxis, the way that the spiraling fronds of a yucca plant sort of emerge. And so like at that
Cool.
point, I was learning all these things about code and nature and making connections and realizing that like there's so much math in our physical world. You know, we live in a mathematical space. And so how can I like kind of extract that math from nature and like kind of bring it into these works? And so I don't know. So a lot changed, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'll get back to you.
No, man, no, that's perfect. So at that point you then kind of transitioned to exploring, I guess, works that were a little bit more figurative. And with Really Random Rock, it seems like that is also, there's also a connection there with some of the work that you were doing during your MFA.
Yes,
Which is
totally.
really cool, because I didn't really know about that project before, but that makes so much sense. So you were connecting it, seems like, with maybe some of that, and then also with the Marfa Yucca. I always say Marfa Yucca. I don't know if it's Yucca, Yucca.
Yeah.
Is it E? Is
Some
it
people
F?
say yucca, some people say yucca. I say yucca. It's just easier for me to say yucca. So I say
Then
yucca.
Yucca. All right. And then with Marfa Yucca, obviously the connection with Marfa, and that was a free mint
It
for
was.
attendees
Yeah.
of the Marfa get together back in 2022, right?
Right. Right. So
So
people that went to Marfa in that year were able to mint a Marfa Yucca output, but it wasn't in person in Marfa. It was more like in Marfa they handed out some cards with information and then you register on there, and then when you got home after the Marfa experience, then you could mint the project. And I love that project still. I have one framed in my house, and I really fell in love with yuccas and plants in general, and just things out there in the desert. It's just like Marfa has so much to offer, and yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I pushed myself as an artist doing those projects. Um, Not only did I understand like that you can kind of mimic nature with math, but there's also a lot of cool insights that come from all this stuff. Is that like by creating these things with code, you're essentially training your brain how to create them by hand too. And so like the Marfa
cool.
algorithm, the Marfa Yucca algorithm is something that like you as a collector may just see like something that's generative and complex, but myself as an artist, since I've spent so much time figuring out all those little details of the plants and whatnot, like that I could recreate that on paper, you know, and like actually fit the algorithm. Same with the Really Random Rock is like, not only did I learn how to draw rocks with code, but what you do with code is like reversible back into the physical medium. And so I learned how to draw that algorithm in a physical sense too. And so like it's just really interesting insight is that like we're learning to, as an artist, we learn to create something using code, but we're also learning how to create it back in a physical sense too. Because if you follow, it's all rules. If you follow the rules with a Sharpie on a piece of paper, you end up with the exact same result as you do, you know, on the digital screen. And so like it's like this real interesting, like to me that's super interesting. Like how does this tie back to like the physical, you know, traditional process of art? And so I just find little insights like that super cool. Just thought I'd share that.
That is super cool. There's almost like a purity to that. I feel like it's
Yeah,
like it's
yeah,
interesting.
it's super neat.
I think maybe then for this upcoming Marfa, you should be releasing a series of just hand drawn Marfa Yuccas this
That would
year.
be a
Maybe
great
be
idea. Oh my
500.
God. You know, every year in Marfa, I've done something like kind of out there. The first year I was signing books, Gen Trilogy books, and I just gave them out for free. I mean, there was a lot of books handed out. And in the second year, I was drawing rocks for people, really random rocks for people, just casually, whoever I bumped into. In the third year, I did the Pin Pavilion, which is gathered a bunch of artists. Everybody created their own pin, And then I put together these little like gachapon machines, like capsule ball machines, and then ArtBlocks gave everybody quarters, and so everybody was able to take these quarters and put them in the pin machine and get a unique pin from an artist. And so that was like so much fun, and all these pins are so cool looking and unique, and all the money we raised from that went to the buy books for kids at the Marfa library. So it was kind of like just super beneficial all around, and those are all coding books too. And then the last year, this past year, I made this like stamp set thing where like it's just like a bunch of unique engraved rock stamps and sand and like raking lines, and people could sit at this table and assemble um these sort of like combinatorial rock gardens. Like everybody's was unique, and you could get expressive with it if you wanted to. And then so the stamps would be assembled by visitors on like a metal plate, and they would bring the metal plate to me, and then I would ink it up and then stamp it on a sheet of paper and print it. And so it's kind of like a fun way to play with combination, permutation kind of stuff. So that was fun. So I'm always thinking like, what am I gonna do next year? Like, I gotta just keep doing weird things that are out there. And
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I remember we actually met at the pin machine 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
that is
yeah,
where
yeah,
we met.
yeah. And then last year, yeah, we really enjoyed that whole process of getting these prints made. It's a messy process, eh? It's
Oh yeah, yeah.
can
It was
get messy.
messy and just a lot of like inking and pushing and
Yeah,
pulling of
you were working hard.
the bar, the metal bar on top.
I remember me and my girlfriend would just like seeing you just inking them up, and I'm just like, man, this guy is like working overtime right now. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and yeah, I really appreciated just bringing that back home and having that print. So it's a
Cool.
good it's a really great memory. So
Sweet.
and then I guess kind of going back to some of your digital work. So you had Really Random Rock that then led to the Marfa Yucca, which was then followed by your Bright Moments drop.
Yes.
And I'm going to try to say it. Bosque de Chapultepec.
That was like a French reading. It's
yeah.
Bosque
it.
de Chapultepec.
Oh man, it sounds so much better when you say it.
No, it's basically just the name of like the Central Park in Mexico City, and it's a forest. And Chapultepec is sort of refers to the like a grasshopper, so like grasshopper forest, something like that.
Wow, I love that. That's cool. Yeah. So then with that release, I mean, this is following Marfa Yucca, and I mean, the project is a beautiful landscapes of kind of like forests is what it looks like. I guess like maybe a parks, I guess, because some of them they have these paths.
Exactly. There's scenes from the park there. They're views of, I mean, not real views of the park, but they're inspired by that park. Like that park has really particular trees. You know, not any kind of trees that I usually see in Houston where I live, or really anywhere. They're just very particular branch styles, and the whole park has a beautiful vibe. I mean, it's like partly tropical, but not necessarily fully tropical. There's a bunch of palms and things and palmettos, and it's just it's very jungle like, and just the most beautiful place. You know, I grew up just going to Mexico City every year, and it plays an interesting role in my life, that place. My grandfather would go to that park and he would paint the scenery there, and so it was kind of like, you know, vibing with my grandfather's work and his art practice in the process of making that. But the project is unique to me in a way because it sort of pushed into new algorithms. With that project, I'm using a circle packing algorithm to basically paint this entire image with dots that don't even overlap, like they're just side by side. And that's just like, you know, like it's just such a cool process working on that algorithm. I built that thing from scratch, like from the ground up, and I spent probably 3 months like intensively working on that. So it was a huge labor of love for me, but I think it was worth it in the end. The outputs are really stunning, and can't tell you how many like large scale prints I've made for people, and they have, I've seen photos of people like framing them and putting them in their houses, and I'm just like, I'm in love with the result. Just these paths through the forest, and there's something like kind of mystical about it. Like the colors are all generative. There's just like there's a lot of like vibing with artists from the past. I was looking at a lot of pointillism at the time, just as inspiration. A lot of landscapes from like French period. So it was just like the Fauvist movement and the way they use color too. There's just a lot of that in that embedded in that project, and so it was cool. I love it. I loved going to Bright Moments Mexico, and just like growing up in Mexico, I ate this pastry called a Garibaldi, and it's basically like a little bread that's coated with sprinkles. Sprinkles, if you look at them, are kind of circle packed spheres. And so
Okay.
for the event, I had the Bright Moments team, like, they went out every morning and bought like a box full of these pastries, and then everybody that came into the booth to mint the work, uh, they could mint it while crunching on this little pastry, crunching on all the circles, and then seeing all the circles on the screen. And it was a cool experience. And then like there was like a rug on the floor. I'm sorry, picnic blanket and like a basket, and the lighting was really cool. And it was just like the coolest little setup, super cozy, and just a total memorable experience. So it was a really awesome experience. The whole minting of it as well, it's just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think nobody really does it like Bright Moments
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
IRL minting process.
There's definitely a huge gap missing in the space, and that's Bright Moments. When they were, I feel you know, like it's sad that there's something missing in the space, and
Hmm.
Bright Moments filled that gap.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I were highly considering doing a quick visit to Mexico City before we go to Marfa this year.
Sweet.
So if so, I'm gonna have to A, figure out where that park is, and B, try some of these pastries. So
That is
that's really
so
cool.
awesome.
So after your Bright Moments drop, then we have, I believe the next project that you had released was Elevate Heart, which was
Yeah.
a bit of a, I guess, was it a collaboration with SquiggleDAO?
It was actually, yes. So that project is actually more of like a collaboration with SquiggleDAO, with a lot of like just influence from Eric. For me, that project is sort of like an ode to my brother. Like he's sort of like the protagonist in that work, just because he lifts everybody up. He's super positive. He's created all of this that we're this whole ArtBlocks ecosystem, and still maintains like the most humble personality, the most humble attitude. Still has time for his family. Still has time for his friends. Still has time for like for everything. Somehow, despite traveling all over the world, like nonstop, and still has time to promote artists that maybe don't get enough attention or whatever. He is like literally somebody who uplifts everybody. And so like Elevate Heart is sort of an ode to my brother. And so the project has a bunch of little figures that sort of lift up hearts above their head repeatedly. And the style is like kind of hand drawn, and then it erases, and then it draws again, and it erases. And over time, it sort of builds up this like tapestry of just abstraction. And so that project was with SquiggleDAO, and the team at SquiggleDAO was like freaking awesome to work with. So that was all a really good experience. But yeah, I think that project is maybe like underappreciated, just because I don't see much about it. But I know that a lot of people really enjoyed it and really still do enjoy it. I would just like to get myself a Samsung frame vertically installed on my wall someday, and just have that playing nonstop, just as it would just brighten up the space. So Samsung frame goals right there.
Cool, man. I love that. It's a really solid project, man. And I love the what led you to create that project, and the fact that there's a collaboration with SquiggleDAO. I think is a pretty neat kind of way that you went about releasing this project. That makes, I think, a lot of sense. A lot of sense. And so that's a great project. And then your next project, I don't know if this was directly after, but it's very much so linked, it seems, is you did a one of one called Jump for Joy.
Yes.
And so I'm
Yes.
curious, yeah, if you can talk about that. And I know there was also a small series of edition of prints that you did with that as well. So maybe talk
Yes.
about that as well.
Totally. The Jump for Joy is sort of a one of one. That was for the as a fundraiser auction. I want to say it was UNICEF, and their initiative to connect people with broadband internet across the world. So it was kind of like a charity thing. I created that project with just like the spark of joy that people get when they learn about generative art and creative coding in general. I spent a lot of time teaching. I've taught courses on creative coding. I've taught courses on sculpture and art and everything. I've also done some pretty nice intensives, like a 2-week super course on creative coding with grad students and things like that. And I also teach elementary school kids in Marfa each summer. And not everybody gets it, like a lot of students it's a challenge to learn this stuff, right? There's a serious learning curve. And so, but every now and then you get a student that just like, they see the potential, right? Like they refresh and see the outputs, and then they get excited thinking, oh my God, like this is infinite. It's almost like their brain is seeing infinity for the first time, and they see potential, right? And so that's what makes teaching always worthwhile, is when you see that spark of joy in people's eyes when they get it. And so like Jump for Joy is kind of like that spark. It's like there's a character, he's jumping and he's got this laptop, and on the laptop screen is P5.js, like some shapes and stuff. And so the whole thing is just written with code and generated for that one of one. And then it was auctioned off, and then I made a print series because I just I love the output personally myself. I think it's a really, really strong composition. It's really simple, a message, really pure, positive, and just happy. It's joyful. And so I decided to create a print edition of it. And so I made 5 prints, screen printed by a local shop here in Houston. And then each one of those prints had an NFC tag on the back. So they're digitized and digital physical sort of pairs. Sold those during Marfa, and everybody loved them. And I was just super excited to get physical prints out into the world. It's something I don't usually do too often, like actual screen print edition. Most of the things I've done have been printed inkjet prints. There's a big difference, like just when you see the actual screen print ink like laying on the surface, it just feels different. And so I'd like to do more of that in the future, hopefully. But yeah, super, super cool one of one, and just excited for the people that grabbed one in Marfa.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm super jealous of those people. That's for sure. And then another project that you released was Bokashi Kone
Yes.
in 2023.
Yes.
So you wanna talk about that
I
project?
love it. Yes. Yes. It's another one of those kind of like, underappreciated projects of mine, I think. It's actually just a real simple concept, just playing with color. Proof Collective, they had the Proof Grails, and they selected me as one of the artists, so I got to create a project for them. And the whole premise is that like maybe you do something that's like not in your usual style, not super easy to identify who the artist is. And because the minting is blind, it's blind minting. So I took that as an opportunity to create a little bit of an exploratory project. And so the kind of novelty for me in that project is just the way that color is designated. It's completely generative. And I'm basically creating like behind the scenes of the project, I'm creating a really interesting just color spectrum RGB scale, right? And I'm using points to kind of traverse that scale in different ways. And so the project builds up a bunch of layers and creates these cones. And just like the gradations of those colors are super reminiscent of like subtle, soft gradations in Japanese block printing. That's really, so the word Bokashi is, just from my research, is a term that refers to a very particular technique in Japanese block printing where like they use gradations to create sky effects or just real soft gradations. And those are usually really hard to achieve, even in physical print. Like if you're going to make a gradient with paintbrush and ink, you're going to use maybe 2 or 3 colors, and it's going to be like hard stepped gradient. But with code, you can actually traverse gradients that you could never recreate in real life, right? And so a lot of these cone images are just real subtle sort of shifts in color and hue that create nice highlighting effects, or it's just traversing color in like maybe not such a normal way. And I just love that about it. I think the imagery is super simple. It's just this cone, and personally I love cones. I think that the cone shape, the truncated cones, are just a really pure shape. And um and uh and so then like the algorithm sort of takes these cones and like on occasion will like split them apart or like twist them. I don't know, just playing with shapes and stuff, and playing with color, and that's what that project is. And I think some of those outputs have like incredible, just really unique color, themes that are not very normal, things you don't usually see. And hopefully one day I will get those into some kind of physical printed capacity
Mm.
to really enjoy them. I think they make really good statement pieces on a wall, and I just, yeah, I love that project.
I'm on your website right now. I'm looking through a lot of the different outputs for this project. And by the way, I would recommend that if anyone's interested in DCA's work, to go check out his website. You can find it on his Twitter handle, and you can kind of go through and look at all these different collections we've been talking about and different outputs. So, but yeah, man, these would look really. I would love to see one of these printed and
Yeah,
framed, probably like right here, like right beside my table here. That would be great.
nice.
Um, it's a really cool project, and that was released in 2023.
Yes,
So
December.
since Jump for Joy and Bokashi Cone,
Hmm.
Have you had released any other
No,
works
I
yet?
haven't actually. Nothing besides maybe I did a one of one for an auction in Miami during Art Basel.
Right.
But other than that, no, I've been working on my own stuff, but I haven't released anything. Sort of been, I got hired by Generative Goods full time, so I work full time on their projects, and I just put like all my passion and joy for coding into their projects. It's family. This is Eric's business, and it's a small team. It's Eric, myself, and his wife Mara. And so I feel like, everything I put into there is all for family, and it's all for everybody's, it's, I go all in. So I don't have that much time to tinker outside of that, but I do on occasion get a chance to kind of write my own code and explore. And not only that, but the stuff that I learn, like a lot of the algorithms I write for generative goods are actually like really great algorithms that I could maybe use in my own work too. So I always also see that like I'm also making stuff that I could use. But so I think, I haven't really created my own project since, but it's definitely the next thing on my radar, especially the next couple of months. I think I'm going to be working on my own project for a while. And I have some paternity leave time, and I also am carving out space on the weekends or after work to kind of do my own thing, and definitely pushing in some interesting directions with my own work. I feel like I'm at that point where I just want to create something that's like super meaningful to me, something that's like really pure and just authentic. to who I am. Like, you mentioned earlier that you're doing this podcast thing to kind of help find your voice. And I want to say, like, as an artist, I think that's a lifelong endeavor, even once you've found your voice, which I'm still looking for my voice, like I'm still looking for my voice. And I honestly feel that even once it is found, it's still a lifelong process of refining that more and more. And so, I think I'm at that point where I just want to create something that's like extremely authentic and true to myself and deeply resonates with me on, even like a spiritual level. And so, yeah, I just feel really good about, like what's on the horizon for my own work. I'm not sure how to express it. I've done a lot of soul searching. I'm also a new father, and building a family. I've secured myself a comfortable place to live finally, and a lot of things are kind of like going in my favor just in life wise, and I'm very happy about that. And I just feel like there's this big upwelling of like goodness that's itching to come out into art and into work, and I'm seeking ways to get that out. And I've just been going through over ideas in my head and playing with concepts from rocks to like maps to just to like getting really expressive with drawing, creating drawings that are just generative but like highly expressive. I've also exploring these ideas around self-playing games. Back in like 21, I think I had this idea like, what if I make a game that just plays itself, that is just idle, just constantly like endlessly evolving on screen. And I've been exploring that a little bit. Just last night, I was dabbling with some code and was doing some really cool PRNG stuff, like creating uh, like procedural maps and whatnot. So I'm just trying. I'm playing with a bunch of different concepts, but at the end of the day, I know that like my next work is going to be deeply inspired by just life, and hopefully it resonates with people. Like it's really just about, this was going to be for me, and it's going to be about me, and it's going to be just very authentic and pure. So I'm not sure when that will be. Maybe in a couple of months, maybe later. We'll see. But yeah, I hope that that's something that people can look out for.
All right, man. Well, dude, I'm excited for you, and wishing you the best of luck on that process. And maybe you'll have to come back on, and we can have a conversation about it when you're ready to release.
Yeah,
At
totally.
some point.
That'd be awesome.
On this kind of topic about this authentic process for you. So the last podcast episode, I was speaking with Harvey Rayner, and he's a great friend of mine, and he's a really talented generative artist. He just had a really great release, Amplitudes of
Yeah,
Canvas, with ArtBlocks
totally.
Studio. Yeah, really cool. And something that he had mentioned, he's got so many amazing, insightful thoughts and perspectives. And something that he had shared was that he feels like he has kind of matured in his art practice like over the years. And I don't want to misquote him, but this is my interpretation of what he was saying. And something that he has began to do is to kind of maintain that level of authenticity with himself and in his art practice, but at the same time looking to see his what his contemporaries are doing, and understanding kind of like you could call it the broader market, or
Mhm.
just kind of like the overall space as a whole, and taking that with a grain of salt, but kind of looking at that as a bit of as a reference point. And I'm kind of curious if you have if that brings any kind of like thoughts or perspectives to you, or what you think
Absolutely.
of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if that's what he's saying, I deeply resonate with that. I think it's been just such a whirlwind, like the past 5 years of market speculation and collectorship, and people collecting for the right reasons, the wrong reasons, like whatever. It's all part of the market, but the market is like just so, it's so loud, and it's so like in your face. It's as an artist, it can be a little sad and depressing, but at the same time, like it's like it's your career. The market's what makes your career. And not only that, it's like the collectors really do exist out there. They are real people that truly resonate with the work. I want to say in most of the occasions. But like those are the people that really matter to me. Just the market is so loud and it gets in you and it gets in your head and then it follows you around even when you're disconnected. Like when it clouds your judgment, and when you're creating work for yourself, it's always like this nagging thing that's like, well, like what if people don't like it? What if it doesn't what if, like, and it's just downward spiraling sort of thought processes that sort of cloud your judgment. And it's hard, it's hard to overcome that. And I think that like with this recent sort of downturn that we had, like this, I would say like most recent bear market sort of time frame, time span that we just kind of went through. I think that is like, that's like the best time to build, because that's when like only the people that remain are the ones that care. Only the people that are around are, like they're the ones that you're making the work for. And I think that like maybe that sort of helped a lot of artists, including myself, sort of get some mental clarity. Say, hey, you know what? Like the huge buzz is over. Like now I'm making work because I truly want to make it, and because like this is for me, and this is not for market dynamics, right? And it just helps clear a lot of that cloud away. And I think that's maybe like, obviously can't speak for him or don't know what he's going through, but I imagine that perhaps like, this recent bear market sort of helps a lot of artists clear out their mind, and including myself. And that, I think that's the best thing that could happen for art. And it's the best thing that could happen for generative art, because now we're getting the next wave of artists that are, like thinking about this work as a whole. They're looking back at the last 5 years and saying, hey, like that was all awesome, but like, how can I really think about this work in a new way and without the pressure of the market? And so, and it's also been a good 5-year period of skill building for most artists in this space that are working in this medium. And a lot of maturing has happened. And I feel it myself. I feel like my work has matured. My mentality has matured. My skills have matured. And so I'm ready to like embrace the next wave of generative art that I create to be something that comes from deeper within, something which way more pure and way more just authentic. And I guarantee you that I'm not the only one feeling that way. So I totally vibe with that. Just the market's just, fuck the market. I love that everybody's collecting and going all ape shit over stuff, but I would be very happy if I put out an edition and it just sat there on the market, without minting out for a long time. Like that would just feel good to me. It would feel good. It would feel like there's no pressure. It would feel like it's there for whoever wants it, and not there for the speculation or for the price pump. Like it would feel good. And so like, I'm using that as like my guide. Like that's the seed I'm planting in my mind as I think about my next work. Is like, I want to make something that's just going to sit there unminted, because maybe people don't discover it, but it's beautiful. And those who find it beautiful and find the beauty in it will mint it and will enjoy it. And those are the people I want to make art for. And, so like that's sort of like the mindset that I've set myself in to create better work and to create work that just is free from all the market dynamics.
I love that, man. I love that. Where we're at right now is a moment in time, and kind of like moving forward, how do you see this space kind of continuing to evolve? And how do you see it kind of fitting in with like kind of the broader just contemporary art space as a whole?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea what'll happen next, but I think that if artists are kind of really refining their craft and returning to the space to create new work with a new mindset, that we're going to see a lot of maturity. We're going to see a lot of mature work come out, and possibly works that'll be pivotal in a different way than they were in 2021. Things that truly resonate with the expressive side of the artist, or maybe resonate with, like meaning in terms of like, an expressive capacity, instead of meaning in terms of like how can you use the blockchain medium to, and how do you turn the blockchain medium on itself? Which is like, that's also another sort of facet of exploration in this space, is like, well, how do you make work about blockchain, using blockchain that criticizes blockchain, but also elevates blockchain that, like, that's cool. But like, that's not the kind of work I'm necessarily looking for to make myself. I'm looking to make works that are deeply expressive of my own sort of life experience, whether it uses the blockchain as a medium or not. It just happens that generative is the medium that I use, and that's the format that I have learned to operate in. So I think we're going to see work in that capacity, hopefully. But who knows? Like, AI is on the edge, and it's also kind of throwing a big wrench in things, but also amplifying. Like, I'm using AI a little bit to like help me just solve stupid problems that I would waste hours on. Just whatever, it's just a tool. Use AI to do it. Um, but I don't necessarily love, like, I still think that coding is a craft, and it's something that needs to be cherished by the artist in a way that, like, they're creating something that they're, with their own hands, with their own mind, with their own thought process. AI is not there yet for the artist. I think it's there for web apps and things like that, but it's not fully there for the artist yet. So we have to use it creatively, but who knows what'll come next, like, we're going to be seeing robots that are painting their own paintings in the next year or two. Like, who's going to want to buy a painting made by a human when you got robots doing it? Or, like, just anything can change. And obviously,
For
like,
sure.
painting is not dead, and photography never died, and all that kind of stuff. And, generative art and coding is never going to die, even if we do have AI. So, like, it just ups the ante. Like the stakes have gotten higher for like what you can do as a human. How do you utilize AI? How do you use it to boost your creativity in a way that can really propel you forward? And not only that, but amplify your expression. That's the real goal. It's like, how do you amplify your expression? So who knows what we'll see? I think we'll see a lot of new things and new directions, and whatever, like, everything's fair game, and art is art at the end of the day. So no telling what'll happen next or what'll come next.
For sure. I know, highly unpredictable but exciting times that we're living through. And
Yeah.
I also agree about kind of like embracing, the technology as it continues to evolve. And it's funny because we've had some a decent amount of coding
Yeah.
sessions together where you've had a chance to look through some of my code and the generative works that I've been working on for last couple years. And now I'm able to, take a piece of my code that's highly inefficient, but produces the visual output that I'm looking for. And I could just feed it through ChatGPT and say, hey, like, condense this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's able to just do that. So, especially for someone like me who's had, thousands of lines of code that could probably be condensed by 80 to 90%.
Right. Right.
That's a useful way of using these AI tools for me as a part of my practice. So but there are a lot of tough questions and uncertainties, I think, as that technology continues to get better
Yeah.
and be more broadly used, and as it becomes more ubiquitous in kind of the ways that we're expressing ourselves, and also the ways that we are also experiencing kind of like works from other people in whatever ways. It's just going to be, it's just hard to know how things will really unfold, I guess. So, but it's interesting times for sure.
It's definitely, what a time to be alive. I mean, that's
I know,
wild.
seriously. So, man, I know we're getting like
Yeah.
pretty late right now.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I have like two last questions that I kind of wanted to ask. So, first question, ArtBlocks 500, AB 500. So for you, as someone who's been, an artist on the platform, and you've been there before even ArtBlocks was created, what are your thoughts about AB 500?
I mean, shoot, man, that's so many works of art, 500 works of art. I just think it's phenomenal. What a great concept. Just to kind of like encapsulate the whole experience of the last 5 years into like a collection like that, I think is awesome. I have couple of cherry picked items from the ArtBlocks 500 in my collection, just from over time, collecting. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get all 500, but that would be an insanely awesome goal to set for myself. It's just so expensive. I don't think I could ever afford most of those works, but imagine if you could. It would be so cool.
Tell
No,
me
I
about it.
don't know. ArtBlocks 500 is awesome. It's good to see kind of like a rounding out of a time period. And like I said, like encapsulation of it. There's still some remaining. So like there's still a handful of projects left to get to the 500 mark. So it'll be exciting to see what projects come out. And yeah, I mean, I'm just super proud to have experienced it and lived through it and been there from day one all the way to that point. And ArtBlocks is not dead yet. It's not dying. It's just a rounding off. It's closing off a chapter and opening a new one. So I'm also super excited to see what comes next from ArtBlocks. Obviously, I'm related to Eric, but I don't know all the intel. I don't have all the insights from what goes on with ArtBlocks. I'm a lot of it is also new to me. Like, I'm excited to see what comes next, and I'm also an artist on the platform and a consumer of their product. So like, there's excitement there. Like I want to know. I want to see how what comes next and how they push boundaries and just it's just I don't know. I'm excited about it. I don't know what else to say. It's a cool thing, and kind of melancholy too. Like seeing it all kind of. It's all just history, and hopefully somebody comes by and they write about it, and they kind of cement it into the larger canon of the art movement. Do a lot of writing and exhibitions and things like that. I think it's a no-brainer that this is definitely a pivotal time period for this kind of art form, and ArtBlocks being at the very epicenter of it, I think is going to be, it's going to be, I think, an important part of the medium's history. So I do think that people will write about this and remember it and cherish this time period. I mean, honestly, like there were times when where it literally felt like you were in a French cafe in Discord, like you were reliving modernism and those moments, but just in a digital version, So I feel pretty confidently that in the future, people will look back and be like, man, what was it like to be at home and like be able to chat on Discord about these art topics and, analyze art and think about code. They'll be talking about us like the way we talk about the modernists, like totally romanticized, probably over exaggerated, but at the same time, like super cool to have experienced that and to live through that. So like that's probably one of the coolest things we'll experience in life is being part of the generative art boom.
For sure. And shout out to Block Talk in the
Yeah,
ArtBlocks
totally.
Discord for sure.
Blog Talk. Oh my God. So great.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And then kind of a follow up to that is with regards to Marfa Weekend. So we've already kind of touched on Marfa Weekend, but I just want to know just your perspective, kind of high level, Marfa Weekend, the significance to you, and you're going to be there this year, right?
Definitely. Oh
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
of course. I mean, I can't miss that. That's like the most exciting event for the year. I think it's super significant to me just because, I get to see it all kind of unfold over the years. But like when it comes to Marfa Weekend, I also am just a participant. Sometimes I see the amount of work that goes into hosting that event just on the ArtBlock side, and just like tremendous amount of energy and productivity that goes into organizing the events and making sure that everybody's going to be comfortable and that like things work out. And so I do get to see that from behind the scenes a little bit, and I just love the freaking town. I mean, I love Marfa. I go out there three to four times a year. It's not far for me because I live in Houston. Houston has a direct train that goes from Houston to Alpine, and then it's just a 30-minute drive to Marfa. And so I can actually go out there pretty often, and I go out there to teach in the summertime, to teach all the elementary school kids. And then in the past, I was going out there to teach grad school programs with the University of Houston. I go out there for ArtBlocks Weekend. I go out there just for a weekend getaway sometimes, just to clear my mind. My wife and I, we go out there together, and it's just such a awesome place. It has so much to give, and it's super accommodating to people from all walks of life. There's so many events held there. There's bike races. There's ArtBlocks weekend, of course, but there's also like film festivals. There's like chili cook-offs and whatnot. And it also has the best sandwiches, in my opinion, in the whole entire United States, which is a Bordeaux sandwich. They are just so damn good. And I would literally go out there just for the sandwich. Marfa burrito is awesome too. So I don't know. It's just a freaking awesome place. To me, it's been great to see the town just full of ArtBlocks people. You know how like the difficulty of getting there weeds out a lot of maybe hardcore speculators that are just, it's not like a profitable thing for them to go out there. And so you get just pure art diehards. You get artists that go out there and we connect all together. And I get to chat with people that are usually in New York or in Germany or in other places, and super cool to just connect with everybody. Yeah, it's just like super nostalgic. I love it. It's definitely meaningful to me. When I think of ArtBlocks Marfa, I think of the landscape. I just get a mental image of like that horizon out in the distance with the sunset. I don't know. It's magical.
I agree, man. I can't wait. Can't wait for Marfa coming up in October.
It's going to be awesome.
I can't wait. All right, man. Well, dude, it's been awesome chatting with you. I don't know, any kind of final perspectives that you might want to share? Any thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, just happy to be here. I don't know. Like, I lurk on Twitter a lot. I don't really comment or post too much unique content on there. I'm more of a lurker, so I'm always around kind of watching, seeing what everyone's doing, what everyone's saying. But, I hope that people can appreciate the lurkers out there too. Like I'm not super active in with content. Personally, I feel like I'm very shy and online, especially typing, and so I don't really engage a lot in that way. But yeah, for all listeners out there, I'm always around, for DMs or whatever, and just to chat. I love talking about code. I love talking about algorithms. If anyone's out there is learning to code, hit me up and we can talk about code. We can, do that kind of stuff. That's really my main focus. Other than that, just happy to be live, happy to be here. Excited that the space is still active as ever. There's a lot happening in the crypto world in general. So it's just cool to see it all happen. And yeah, just happy to be here. I don't know what else to say.
Cool, man. That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, I mean, I do recommend that anybody, if you are learning to code or you're working on, generative work, would say like firsthand, Daniel's been like super helpful for me. He's super patient and he clearly has experience, not just on the coding side, but on the teaching side. And I think it comes naturally to you. So it's been a real pleasure. Being able to get that support from you, but also just to become friends over the last couple of years, man. I think about you very highly, and I'm really excited for where you're at right now as a new father, and with the work that you're doing with generative goods, and as you continue to come back into your artistic practice. I'll be very excited to see kind of what's on the horizon, and I just look forward to many more years to come.
Yeah.
Kind of being a part of this community, and whatever comes, in the future with everything that's happening with tech and crypto and all these different things. I feel very blessed to have been a part of this movement early on, and to have formed relationships with amazing people like yourselves. So, thanks for coming on the podcast as well. I appreciate that support, and
Appreciate that,
man, I look forward to seeing you later this year in Marfa and possibly in Houston too.
Yes. Very excited about that. So look forward to seeing you in Marfa for sure, man. It'll be a blast. And yeah, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate you in so many different ways. And also just all the kind of like creative things that you're doing, just to even be part of that from as an outsider is awesome. So thanks for having me, man.
For sure, man. Yeah, my pleasure. And even with the lurkers, they often have a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes,
Yeah,
right? So
true.
that kind of feeds into me doing this podcast thing, is that I've also been, very much so a lurker for years, but I feel like, whether it's through the generative works that I'm working on, or this podcast, project that I'm working on, those are opportunities for me to express myself as well and to connect with
Hmm.
people within our community. But I feel like also the annual Marfa get together, it's just like the best way of being able to
It
connect with
really
people.
is.
So yeah.
Yeah, really is.
So
Cool.
anyways, man. Cool, man. Okay. So thanks for coming on, dude. And yeah, hope everyone enjoyed that episode.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube, and give me a follow on Twitter at longformart. As mentioned, none of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment and information purposes only. More information can be found in the podcast episode description. And thanks so much for listening in. I'll be back soon with another episode.